In the summer of 1944, Europe was on the move again. Following the success of the Normandy landings, Allied forces pushed deep into France, opening the road to the liberation of Western Europe. But victory on the battlefield depended on more than courage and firepower. Behind the front lines, another battle was taking place. One fought not with rifles, but with fuel, food, and endless miles of road. That battle was called the Red Ball Express. In the weeks after D-Day, the Allied advance was faster than anyone had predicted. But with that speed came a new and dangerous problem. The armies at the front were outrunning their supplies. Railways had been bombed, bridges destroyed, and ports were still under repair. Without fuel, the tanks stopped. Without ammunition, the advance would collapse. The only solution left was the road. The U.S. Army responded by creating one of the largest and most ambitious logistical operations in military history, the Red Ball Express. Launched on August 25, 1944, it became the lifeline of the Allied armies in Western Europe. The term Red Ball came from American railroads, where it marked express freight trains that carried priority cargo. Now it symbolized the endless stream of military trucks racing across France toward the front. The system was simple but brilliant. The Red Ball route began at the port of Cherbourg in Normandy and stretched hundreds of kilometers toward the combat zones. More than 6,000 trucks operated day and night, carrying ammunition, fuel, food, and spare parts. Together, they moved between 12 and 16,000 tons of supplies every single day, an achievement unmatched at the time. To keep traffic flowing, military engineers designed separate roads for outgoing and returning convoys. Only Red Ball vehicles were allowed to use these routes. Each truck followed strict speed and timing rules. Stopping was forbidden. The result was a constant, uninterrupted flow of supplies, a moving artery of war that kept the Allied armies alive. Most of the men behind the wheels were young and far from home. About 75% of the Red Ball drivers were African American soldiers, serving in a segregated army that rarely gave them recognition. But through the Red Ball Express, their skill, determination, and discipline became impossible to ignore. These men carried the burden of a continent's liberation on their shoulders. For months, they faced exhaustion, rough terrain, and the constant threat of enemy air attacks. Many drove more than 20 hours without rest through rain, mud, and blackout nights. Yet the supplies never stopped coming, because every gallon of fuel, every box of ammunition, meant one more mile of progress, one more step toward victory. By the autumn of 1944, the Red Ball Express had become the unseen backbone of the Allied advance. It was more than a convoy system. It was the logistical miracle that made victory possible. General Patton's Third Army could not move an inch without it. When the trucks halted, the war halted too. The Red Ball Express stands today as one of the great achievements of World War II logistics, a system built on courage, endurance, and innovation. It was the road that kept an army moving and the road that helped free a continent. The Red Ball Express was not born from careful planning. It was born from necessity. In late August 1944, the Allied forces found themselves moving faster than their own supply lines. The Normandy beaches had become congested, depots were overflowing, and frontline divisions were running dangerously low on fuel. Something had to change, and it had to change immediately. The solution came from the Transportation Corps of the U.S. Army. In less than a week, officers and engineers designed a high-speed truck route that would bypass the destroyed railways and carry supplies directly from the ports to the front. They called it the Red Ball Express. The route stretched roughly 700 kilometers from the Normandy coast to the advancing Allied armies in northern and eastern France. Two parallel roads were chosen, one for trucks heading to the front and another for those returning empty. Civilian traffic was banned. Every few kilometers, military police and repair teams were stationed to keep the flow constant. It was an enormous living machine, powered by gasoline, discipline, and sheer endurance. At its peak, the Red Ball Express operated more than 6,000 vehicles, most of them 2.5-ton GMC trucks, nicknamed Deuce and a Halves. These trucks became symbols of reliability. They carried everything the Army needed: ammunition, rations, spare parts, medical supplies, and above all, fuel, the lifeblood of modern warfare. Each convoy consisted of 20 to 50 vehicles, spaced evenly to avoid accidents and bottlenecks. Drivers were ordered never to stop for any reason. If a truck broke down, it was pushed off the road immediately and repaired later. Speed and consistency mattered more than individual safety. The rule was simple: keep moving no matter what. Convoys were organized and dispatched around the clock. At any given moment, thousands of trucks were in motion, a continuous, unbroken stream of supplies. Military police managed intersections, engineers maintained roads, and mechanics worked tirelessly to keep vehicles running. Every unit had a single mission: to ensure the front never ran dry. Fuel distribution was the system's most critical function. The Third Army under General George S. Patton was advancing so rapidly that it required over 400,000 gallons of gasoline each day. To meet that demand, Red Ball trucks carried 5-gallon jerry cans stacked to the roof. Many drivers joked that they were transporting liquid gold, and in a sense, they were. The operation was coordinated with remarkable precision. Dispatch centers tracked every convoy, monitoring progress through radio reports and checkpoints. The entire network was maintained like a factory line, stretching across war-torn France. At its height, the Red Ball Express moved more than 12,000 tons of supplies every day, a feat no army had ever achieved before by road. Yet, despite its scale, the system was constantly under pressure. Roads were narrow and heavily damaged. Bridges had to be rebuilt overnight by engineering battalions. Drivers faced fatigue, mechanical failures, and sometimes enemy air raids. But the flow never stopped. Each mile of progress at the front was matched by a mile driven behind the lines. By early September 1944, the Red Ball Express had become the heartbeat of the Allied advance. Its efficiency impressed commanders across the front. What had started as an emergency measure had evolved into a finely tuned logistics network, one that proved how vital transportation and organization were to modern warfare. Behind every tank that rolled forward, behind every battalion that kept fighting, there was a truck on the road, part of the endless chain known as the Red Ball Express. Behind the roaring engines and endless convoys of the Red Ball Express were men, thousands of young soldiers who kept the Allied armies alive through their courage and endurance. They were not generals or strategists. They were truck drivers, mechanics, dispatchers, and loaders. But without them, the war in Europe would have come to a halt. Most of these men had little experience when they arrived in France. Many were just teenagers from small towns across America, trained in the basics of driving and vehicle maintenance. Within days, they were navigating bomb-cratered roads, dodging air raids, and steering heavy trucks through rain and darkness. Every trip meant risk, and every mile was earned through exhaustion and determination. What made the Red Ball Express unique was the composition of its workforce. Nearly 75% of the drivers were African American soldiers, members of segregated transportation units that had long been overlooked by military leadership. At home, these men faced discrimination and limited opportunities. But in France, they carried the weight of the Allied advance on their shoulders. The Red Ball Express became their chance to prove their worth, not through speeches but through action. They drove for hours without rest, sleeping in their trucks whenever they could. Meals were scarce and showers were a luxury. Roads were rough, bridges unstable, and weather unpredictable. But the pressure never stopped. General Eisenhower himself would later write that without the Red Ball Express, the Allied armies could not have reached Germany as quickly as they did. That acknowledgement was hard-earned, and it belonged to the men behind the wheel. For African-American drivers, the experience was transformative. Despite segregation, they became essential to the mission's success. Many units, such as the 3,918th Quartermaster Truck Company, gained reputations for efficiency and bravery. Their convoys covered hundreds of miles under constant threat, often in blackout conditions to avoid enemy aircraft. When mechanical problems struck, they repaired their own trucks with whatever parts they could find. They learned to improvise, adapt, and keep moving no matter what. Letters sent home from these soldiers tell a story of exhaustion and pride. They wrote about the endless mud, the lack of sleep, and the constant sound of engines, but also about purpose. For many, it was the first time their work had real meaning. They were not just fighting a war, they were making history. Their white officers, many of whom had never worked alongside black troops before, began to see their dedication firsthand. Reports from the front praised their discipline and reliability. Over time, attitudes started to shift. The Red Ball Express did not end racial segregation in the U.S. Army, but it planted a seed, a living example of equality through performance. The men of the Red Ball Express faced danger every day. German aircraft sometimes targeted the convoys, and mines littered the roads. Accidents were frequent, and fatigue took its toll. Yet morale remained surprisingly strong. The drivers gave their trucks nicknames, painted slogans on the doors, and played music whenever they stopped to rest. Humor became a form of resistance against exhaustion. By the end of 1944, more than 23,000 men had served on the Red Ball Express. Many would go home after the war to a country still divided by color, but they would carry with them a legacy of service and endurance. Their work in France helped lay the foundation for the desegregation of the U.S. military just a few years later. The Red Ball Express was more than a supply line. It was a road to recognition, driven by men who refused to stop. They proved that in war, heroism is not always measured by the battles you fight, but by the burdens you carry and the miles you drive to keep others alive. The road to victory was anything but smooth. For the men of the Red Ball Express, every mile carried a new threat. The enemy was not always visible, yet danger was constant, hidden in the mud, the darkness, and the exhaustion that came with endless driving. The Red Ball route stretched through devastated French countryside, a landscape scarred by months of war. Bridges were destroyed, roads cratered by bombs, and towns reduced to rubble. Most of the highways were narrow and unpaved, winding through forests and villages where enemy snipers might still be hiding. In some areas, mines had not yet been cleared. The drivers never knew if the next bend would bring a safe stretch or an explosion. Weather was another enemy. Heavy autumn rains turned dirt roads into rivers of mud. Tires sank deep, engines overheated, and convoys slowed to a crawl. When the temperature dropped, ice coated the roads, making it nearly impossible to stop or steer safely. Drivers learned to tie chains around their wheels, to shovel mud from under their axles, and to keep moving no matter how bad the storm became. Stopping meant blocking the entire convoy and possibly losing vital hours of delivery time. Then came fatigue. Many drivers worked 16 to 20 hours a day, sleeping only a few hours at roadside depots. Coffee and cigarettes replaced real rest. Some men dozed off at the wheel, their trucks veering dangerously before another soldier shook them awake. A single mistake could trigger a chain reaction, sending vehicles crashing into one another. Still, the orders never changed. Keep the supplies moving. Enemy action added to the peril. Although the Luftwaffe's power was fading by late 1944, German aircraft occasionally raided supply lines. When the sirens sounded, the drivers doused their lights and steered into ditches, waiting for the bombing to pass. On more than one occasion, Red Ball convoys were strafed by low-flying fighters. The aftermath left twisted wrecks smoldering by the roadside, reminders of how fragile their lifeline really was. Even after the skies cleared, sabotage remained a threat. German sympathizers sometimes planted mines or cut communication lines. The military police patrolled constantly, inspecting bridges and escorting convoys through risky zones. But complete safety was impossible. The Red Ball Express operated in a world of uncertainty, where courage meant driving forward despite the unknown. Mechanical failures were an everyday battle. The deuce-and-a-half trucks were sturdy, but the strain was relentless. Engines overheated, transmissions broke, tires blew out. Maintenance crews worked day and night to keep the trucks running. Spare parts were scarce, so soldiers scavenged what they could from damaged vehicles. Some carried extra tires on their roofs, others welded armor plates to the front to deflect shrapnel. Improvisation became a way of survival. The psychological toll was heavy. Many drivers described the journey as a blur of dust, smoke, and noise, a world reduced to headlights, engines, and the endless hum of tires. They drove through villages still burning from retreating German forces, past columns of refugees and wrecked tanks. The smell of war hung in the air. For these men, the road itself became both their workplace and their battlefield. And yet, amid the hardship, there was camaraderie. Drivers shared rations, cigarettes, and stories during brief rest stops. They laughed about their trucks' quirks, helped each other repair engines, and found humor in the absurdity of their situation. These small moments of brotherhood kept morale alive when everything else felt uncertain. As autumn turned to winter, conditions worsened. Snow blanketed the routes and fog limited visibility to a few feet. Convoys moved slower, but they never stopped. Even during the Battle of the Bulge, when German counterattacks threatened to cut off Allied supply lines, the Red Ball Express continued to roll. It was dangerous, exhausting work, but they knew the front depended on them. In the words of one driver, "We weren't heroes. We were just doing our job." But that job meant everything. Through fire, mud, and exhaustion, the Red Ball Express held the line. Every crate delivered, every gallon of fuel transported was a victory of endurance over chaos. The drivers learned that sometimes the hardest battles are fought not with rifles, but with resolve, 1 mile at a time. By late 1944, the Red Ball Express had delivered hundreds of thousands of tons of supplies across the war-torn roads of France. Its impact on the Allied advance was unmistakable. Without it, Patton's Third Army could not have maintained the unprecedented pace that shattered German defenses. Every fuel drum, ration pack, and artillery shell carried on those trucks represented a tangible advantage over an enemy expecting the Allies to slow down. The Germans, who had meticulously calculated American supply limitations, were stunned. Officers studying the convoys could not comprehend the scale or speed of the operation. They had assumed that logistics would constrain the advance, as it had in Russia for German forces. But the Red Ball Express proved that volume, redundancy, and relentless movement could overcome almost any obstacle. Supply lines were no longer a limit, they were a weapon. The human toll of the operation was immense. Drivers worked through exhaustion, illness, and extreme weather, often sleeping only a few hours a night. Accidents and mechanical failures claimed lives, yet morale remained high, fueled by a sense of purpose. These men, mostly African-American soldiers in segregated units, carried the weight of the war on their shoulders. Their work challenged both German expectations and American assumptions about race and capability. The success of the Red Ball Express also sent shockwaves through American military thinking. It highlighted the crucial role of logistics, not as support, but as the lifeblood of modern warfare. Commanders began to understand that a mechanized army was only as strong as its ability to move fuel, ammunition, and food. General Eisenhower and General Patton both acknowledged that without the truck drivers, tanks, and infantry could not have achieved their historic advances. By November 1944, as rail lines were repaired and the front stabilized, the Red Ball Express was formally discontinued. Yet the lessons it taught endured. Military planners studied the operation for decades afterward, extracting principles that would guide modern logistics. The importance of redundancy, the necessity of flexibility, and the power of decentralized decision-making. The Red Ball Express also left a profound legacy on American society. Thousands of drivers returned home with invaluable experience managing large-scale transportation networks. Many went on to careers in trucking, shipping, and infrastructure development, applying the discipline, improvisation, and speed learned on the roads of France to peacetime commerce. The interstate highway system and modern logistics companies owe much to the lessons of the Red Ball Express. The psychological impact of the operation extended beyond logistics. German soldiers, hearing the relentless hum of engines and the unbroken lines of trucks, understood that the Allies were moving faster than they could react. Civilians in liberated France witnessed American abundance, a stark contrast to years of occupation. The Red Ball Express became a symbol of American industrial strength and resolve, proof that determination, innovation, and sheer manpower could overcome the most daunting obstacles. By the war's end, the Red Ball Express had transported over 412,000 tons of supplies, covering more than 122 million ton miles. Over 23,000 men had served on the route, operating thousands of trucks and consuming millions of gallons of fuel. Its success shortened the war in Europe by months and saved countless lives. In historical retrospect, the Red Ball Express was not elegant. It was not efficient in the traditional sense. It was chaotic, exhausting, and resource-intensive. But it worked. It kept the Allied armies moving, defeated German expectations, and demonstrated that industrial capacity and human endurance could redefine warfare. The legacy of the Red Ball Express is clear. It showed that logistics is strategy, that trucks can win battles as decisively as tanks, and that ordinary soldiers, given responsibility and resources, can achieve the extraordinary. The men who drove the endless convoys, often unsung, proved that the most decisive weapon in modern war is not always the biggest gun, but the road that keeps armies supplied. And so the Red Ball Express remains a testament, not just to the ingenuity of the Allied command or the strength of American industry, but to the courage, determination, and endurance of the men who drove those trucks mile after mile, day after day, until victory was achieved. In their engines and tires, the war was won. In their hands, logistics became strategy, and the roads of France became the arteries of Allied victory.